On today's show, we share the 5 biggest challenges that Ron Washington will face as he manages the Halos in 2024. It's time to get locked on with Mike and John, and this is Locked On Angels.
You are Locked On Angels, your daily Los Angeles Angels podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. You can find us anywhere you get your podcasts, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and SiriusXM by searching Locked On Angels. And if you'd like to give back to the Super Halo Bros for all the Angel content, here's some things that you can do. Leave us a rate and a review on Apple Podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that thumbs up button. And if you're not subscribed already, please subscribe to become a Locked On Everydayer. And whether you're watching or listening, come on over to YouTube, leave a comment. It's one of the best ways to get in touch with us and be a part of the conversation. And today's show is brought to you by Jace Medical. Empower yourself when you purchase a Jace case, providing you with a personal supply of 5 antibiotics that treat 50 plus infections. Get yours today at jacemedical.com. That's JASE medical.com.
Happy Monday to you, and thanks for being here for this episode of Locked On Angels, where it's your team every day. You've got the Fritsch brothers here with you, aka the Super Halo Bros. My name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
Hey, my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
Hey, we are rolling right through the offseason, Mike, and we were getting a lot of news, fast and furious, about our Halos. In fact, last week there was the breaking news that Ron Washington will be the new Angels manager. Looks like Ryan Goins is going to be the new infield coach, and we got Eric Young Sr. moving over to third base. So we're starting to see the coaching staff be built out a little bit. Unfortunately, it sounds like Torrey is not going to be part of that equation. It sounds like he turned down the first base job or didn't even really consider it. So give Bob Nightingale a B on his reporting there. But it was all speculation. It was all like desirable. It was who Ron Washington wanted to have on his staff. But with the new coaching staff comes the challenges that Ron Washington is going to face this coming season. And so we're highlighting 5 that Ron Washington will probably have to face this offseason. Of course, our friend Sam Blum from The Athletic wrote a great piece on these 5 challenges. And so we thought we'd break them down and discuss them here on today's show and get input from our Locked On Everydayers as well. So, Mike, why don't you give us reason number 1?
Yeah, the first challenge is the obvious challenge, Johnny, and that's Anthony Rendon. And, of course, Locked On Everydayers know all of the issues with Rendon. But if you don't, may I be the one to remind you of the reasons why he's struggling. We're struggling with him. He's had 3 stints on the injured list and only 2 home runs last season. He had 1 suspension. He's played for the Angels 148 total games since 2021. He played 146 games in 2019 for the Nationals.
Oh, wow.
So just hasn't been on the field. Everybody knows that. Everybody's aware of that. And this actually might be Ron Washington's most important task. We have another task that we're going to talk about that we think is the top priority, but this has got to be maybe number 2 at least, right?
1B.
He needs Rendon to buy in, and he needs to hold the former third base all-star accountable to ensure that it happens.
Mm-hmm.
And as fans, we're not expecting Rendon to be the over 1,000 OPS hitter that he was with the Nationals in 2019 when they went to the World Series. But I think, Johnny, that there's still a lot that the Angels can get out of Anthony Rendon. The 2020 season is a great example of that. It feels miles away, centuries away, right?
Yeah.
After what we've experienced with Rendon. But I think that there is something in his bat and there's something in his glove that could be pivotal. And you and I talked last season about how this suspension at the beginning of the year, when he grabbed the fan, we were like, that's not good. But maybe his fire and his passion could have been really great for the clubhouse. Boy, were we wrong about that. And I think a lot of fans were wrong about that. And I think, honestly, John, it's okay to assume that Ron Washington's no-nonsense reputation was on the mind when the Angels went to hire him and was something that they prioritized during this hiring process. And so now with Ron Washington as the manager of this team and with Anthony Rendon being challenge maybe 1B, what do you think buy-in looks like from Rendon in 2024?
Well, I think there has to be an element of Rendon wanting to be there in 2024. And I don't think that was there last season. Look, I'm not going to take anything away from the fact that when he's on the field, this is a better team. Now, the infield defense was an issue last year. I know he had a lot of errors and was throwing sidearm and couldn't be bothered to fix that. But I think it speaks to where this team was last season, even while they were having, mild success in terms of being within the conversation for the postseason, especially that third wild card spot, up until they absolutely fell apart at the end of July and into August after the trade deadline. But look, here's my thing. I can't imagine being the manager of this team and letting Rendon get away with like the shenanigans that he had going on in the clubhouse. And I don't know what that says about Phil Nevin. I don't know what it says about, Perry Manassian, but all of that to say, it just seems like they all kind of went, yeah, that's Rendon. And
Rendon's going to Rendon. Manny's going to be Manny, right?
Right. And I just don't think that Ron Washington is going to put up with that. But also, and this might be giving too much credit to Rendon, but the fact is like, you want to play for Ron Washington.
Yeah.
You want to play for that guy and you want to win for that guy. Yeah. And I think that's what buy-in is going to look like for Anthony Rendon. Yes, he might get hurt. Yes, he might have an IL stint here or there. There are certain things that you cannot control, and fouling a ball off your shin bone and fracturing it is not something that you can control unless you wear a shin guard, like I did when I was 10 playing soccer, right? But like, it's just the stuff like that.
Yeah.
Injuries you can't control.
Right.
I totally get that, and I totally get the frustration. It's frustrating for fans. It's frustrating for Rendon. But where he lost us, Mike, was the attitude and the quick little quips and the funny comments and things like that. That's where he lost me. I was going to defend him to the ends of the earth because, like I said, when he's on the field and when he's at the plate, the team is better.
Yeah.
And so I think buy-in for him next year looks like, actually being on the field, number one. Number two is producing on the field. And number three is I don't want to see any attitude problems. I don't want to see any funny comments. I don't want to see any nonsense from Anthony Rendon. I want to see a big sign that says 143 days without nonsense. And I don't want them to erase it and put a 0.
Yeah. John, I asked the team where I work a couple of weeks ago this question, because there was a question that was asked of me, and it kind of summarizes this way. If you had to make a decision right now as the new person coming in instead of the person that's been on the team for a while, what is it that you're doing right now that if you came in as a new person, you would change? And the idea behind it was there's no emotion. And so you're walking in going, I probably wouldn't have that person on the team, or we probably wouldn't do this event, or we probably wouldn't participate in that, or we would change this. And that's what Ron Washington gets to do as the new manager of the Angels. And he gets to make a non-emotional decision about Anthony Rendon. And the first conversation he should have is to have a conversation with Anthony Rendon and to just say, like, dude, what do you want to do? Because I want you on this team, but I'm not going to play any games. And so we're going to make a decision right now about what that's going to look like. And I need you to opt in. And if you're not going to opt in, cool. We're going to Perry. We'll get rid of you. We'll do whatever we need to do. And that's an important, I think, first step for Wash to come in and really solve the tension that has been on this team for the last year and really the last couple of years, but really kind of bubbled to the surface in 2023, right?
Yeah, exactly. Hey, speaking of Rendon and the infield defense and kind of the areas where they struggled, Washington is an infield coach, and he's been a fantastic one at that. And we know that that's one area where the Angels really need his insight. In fact, they were ranked 23rd in baseball in terms of ultimate zone rating. That's kind of a catch-all stat that tells you how good a person is at defense. And they were 23rd in all of baseball, according to Fangraphs and Sam Blum's article. 25th in fielding percentage, 27th in outs above average. So not making the good plays out there, things like that. So in other words, defense was a huge issue in 2023. And that's something that I think people are going to see improve if you're watching the Angels in the infield. The players were kind of, in multiple positions, kind of working in different spots. I think that was one area where, yes, versatility is great, but you want to have your like solid guy at their position and be solid at it. I think Neto's a good example of that. Like you knew that he was going to play shortstop every single day that he was in the lineup, right?
Yeah.
So I think it will be a priority for Ron Washington and the new staff to really get this infield defense to shape up and be a lot better. So How does it improve in 2024? Well, there's a video of Washington when he was with the A's showing Nomar how to get ready for the ball. He drew a triangle in the dirt to show where his legs should be and where to grab the ball. And it allowed Nomar to be closer to the bag for the throw and to be in position for a strong throw. And again, Ryan Goins is going to be the new infield coach. So I think that Ron's wisdom will help Ryan and help communicate to the players what needs to be done.
Yeah.
But again, I think you're going to see Ron Washington out there working with the guys and also working with Ryan Goins to get these guys in shape for the infield. So again, Mike, I think, yes, he's going to be the manager, but I think under his watch, you're going to see a lot of improvements because Ron Washington's presence on the field and in the dugout, and especially with Ryan Goins being in his first year as an infield coach, I think this is going to be a great platform for him to learn from Wash and then communicate that to the players, right?
Yeah, it's spring training all year, John. It shouldn't be spring training and spring training. It should be spring training all year, and that these guys should be working on the basic fundamentals all of the time. And truthfully, I think you just made a really good point and possibly just glossed over it. And I think your really good point was this, that versatility is great, but knowing who's playing second and knowing who's playing short and knowing who's playing third and knowing who's at like that's necessary. And knowing that you're going to be the guy there, that's even more necessary. And so as much as I love to see the tool belt type of players, I do think that those tool belt type of players don't bring a strong defense to your team. And so let's get the right guys in the right positions and let's allow them to play and play a lot of games and a lot of innings at that position. And if we're not confident in them, then we replace them with somebody else. And sure, you get a day off here or there, but I think that you need to be Zach Netto's at shortstop and Sean O'Well's going to play first base. This is who's going to be there. We're counting on that. And I think that really helps the defense in 2024.
Yeah, not everybody is a tool belt player as much as you want them to be. It is good to have guys in their standard positions ready and raring to go every single day. Hey, coming up on Locked On Angels, what's the biggest challenge for Wash as manager in 2024? We're going to talk about that one in just a little bit. So stay tuned. It's coming right up.
Locked On Angels is brought to you by Jace Medical. There's a whole lot of uncertainty in our world today, and it's important to be prepared. And all of that uncertainty can cause a lot of supply chain shortages for medications and the inability to get medications in a timely manner. And that's why you and we need a Jace case, because a Jace case is a personalized emergency medication kit that contains 5 essential antibiotics that treat the most common and deadly bacteria infections. And you can customize your case. So not only do you get what they provide for you, but you can also ask for certain medications and they'll provide those as well. And it could be life-saving for you and for your medical needs. All you have to do is simply fill out an online form. In some cases, you can jump on a quick phone call with one of their board-certified physicians. Jace is going to handle everything for you, from online evaluation to licensed pharmacy medication delivery and ongoing consultation and care. Jace has your back. So go to jacemedical.com and enter our promo code Locked On at checkout, and you'll get $20 off your first order. That's Locked On as the promo code when you visit jasemedical.com.
Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Locked On Everydayers, we're having the conversations you want to have here on Locked On Angels. In fact, we're going to be getting into some of the, the speculation about which players the Angels might be interested in. And we'll start with our first episode tomorrow. We'll tell you about that in a little bit, but it's our first of many this offseason, Making the Case, where we list out the pros and cons of a player coming to the Angels and give you a little background on what they've accomplished, what they've done in the league. But again, pros and cons, very, very important for us to weigh as fans and people we'd like to see come to the Angels. So join us tomorrow. And we'll tell you about who's going to be on deck for Making the Case at the end of today's show. So stay tuned for that one.
We're talking about the challenges that Ron Washington will face as the new manager of the Angels. And the third challenge, Johnny, is a very undefined, ambiguous challenge at this point. And that challenge is ushering in the post-Ohtani era. Now, before you comment and before you get upset with me, we don't know what Ohtani's going to do.
Right.
We're not sure what he might do. He might re-sign while we're recording this show. Who knows what he's going to do?
Hold on, let me check my phone.
yeah. Check X, check Twitter, see what happens. All right. But Perry Manassian has declined to say whether the team could make a competitive offer for him. He's only said, like, my kids wouldn't talk to me if I didn't. So there's a lot of indications that he will stay, and there's a lot of indications that he will go. But if Ohtani doesn't return, then transitioning the Angels into a new era becomes really important. It becomes a really important challenge for Ron Washington. And Johnny, it's really impossible to overstate just how much Ohtani has dictated everything surrounding this franchise, especially in the last couple of years, from the microscope that they were under to the advertisements to the constant nonstop questions about him. He was a big part of everyone's day-to-day existence. He was part of our day-to-day existence. Thanks for the content, Shohei Ohtani.
Heck yeah.
And truthfully, Washington will undoubtedly be the face of the change if Ohtani doesn't come back. And that's important, I think, Johnny, because what Wash brings to this team is, I'm going to say it out loud, an identity. And this team really hasn't had an identity. The identity that it's been the last couple of years is we're desperate to get Shohei and Mike Trout to the playoffs.
Yeah.
And so you build a roster around that. And that's not really an identity. That's something that you're it's panic, right? Like you're afraid, like,
desperation.
Oh, we have to do this. We have to yeah, absolutely. And so I think that what Wash brings to this team, and his third challenge, is that he's going to have to help this team find out who they are. What's our identity? You mentioned Ryan Goings is coming over. I love that move. Eric Young Sr. is going to be there. You know, he stole some bags in his time, and so maybe he could be a pinch runner for us, right? Just jump from third base coach to the third base bag. But these coaches are going to come in from Atlanta and from some pretty good careers, and I think they're going to help build out an identity for this team. And Wash is going to help build out an identity for this team. Johnny, if you had to guess what Wash will bring as an identity, how would you summarize it? What would you talk about? What would you want it to be as an Angel fan?
Fundamental baseball. Boring, fundamental baseball, Mike, where you watch the ball roll out to second base and you expect that play to be made 99.9% of the time.
Yeah.
And you expect it to be made because the guy did everything he was supposed to do and did everything that he was taught to do since he was a kid. And so I want to see boring, fundamental baseball in terms of the defense. I want to see adjustments being made when there's runners in scoring position. You poke that ball the other way where there's an opening, and so that way the guy from third can get home, even on a ground out, that sort of thing. I want to see boring, fundamental baseball, and I think that that's what we're going to get with Ron Washington. You know, the Diamondbacks are a great example of fundamental baseball. And you know why they lost against the Rangers in the World Series? You saw a bunch of errors. You saw some issues in the outfield. You saw some issues in the infield. And I don't want to say that that's who the Diamondbacks are. I think that they're a very solid, fundamental team. I think they just kind of got lost in the moment at the end of the day. And I think that being on the big stage in the World Series was kind of what caused them to break down a bit in their fundamentals. So I think the Diamondbacks are a great example of fundamental baseball. And that's who I think the Angels can be under Ron Washington and Eric Young Sr. and Ryan Goins. You know,
you made a great point about the defense, and we've talked a lot about the defense, but the offense is really going to need some help specifically in the runners in scoring position. And so they need to come through, right? They need to be able to make hits and get hits and move runners over. And I'd be really curious as to what Chili Davis could bring if he ends up being the hitting coach, because he's been a hitting coach in a lot of other places. And so looking at those stats, it'd be intriguing to see how he impacted some of the players on the team. And that really is what brings us to challenge number 4 for Ron Washington, is those players on the team. This team is young, and they have a lot of young players. And they need to develop and use these young players in very smart ways. These young players, John, have given me a lot of hope. I know they've given you a lot of hope. And they could be guys that could be franchise cornerstones like Neto and Ohapi and Shawnuel and even Joyce and Bachman. Like, we could have some really solid Angel pieces. It's the Percy and the Rodriguez and the Garrett Andersons that are in the 2020s now. And so I think that we have some really good, fresh cornerstones that we could build upon. But the challenge for Wash will be to strike a balance between getting them everyday reps, helping them develop, and keeping them healthy. And the question I have for you is, how can he do this and do this well?
Yeah, I think it's going to come down to an issue of depth and the fact that some of these guys had a lot of strain on, their bodies. Like Neto had a lot of back issues, and then you saw him playing shortstop because they needed him to play shortstop. But Mike, he re-injured himself again because the back was still bothering him. And so when you're out there making diving stops and trying to make plays, that's going to wear on you. And so I think the Angels, number one, have to have a lot of depth. And number two, they can't be desperate. My motto has been no expectations for 2024. And I know that there's a desire to win. And I think that that's different from expecting to go all the way with the team that you have. I think they just go out there and try to win every single day and do the best that they can, rather than, again, that desperation of, oh, we got to get Trout. We got to get Ohtani. We got to get these guys to the playoffs. Like you said, that's not an identity. And that's not a knock against Trout and Ohtani. That's falling into the narrative of like, you guys aren't doing enough. And sure, they haven't done enough to get Ohtani and Trout to the playoffs. And I don't expect there to be enough next year to get this team to the playoffs. But you can't put yourself in a desperate situation where you need Neto out there every single day while he's dealing with back issues, that sort of thing. Logan O'Hoppe took a swing, hurt that shoulder, kind of shook it off. And what was it, a week later?
Yeah.
4 days later
after that. Yep.
That he required the surgery. Again, we needed Logan O'Hoppe out there, especially at the beginning of the season. I understand the urgency there because you were kind of in a good spot at the beginning of the season and you want him behind the dish. But again, the desperation of getting somewhere in 2023 caused some issues for our young players. So I think that Ron Washington is going to have to be really smart. I appreciate Sam bringing this point up because it's something I hadn't considered. And so he brought this up in his article. They got to be in a position where they can't be desperate and running out those same guys every single day if they're hurting, if they're banged up, if they're not able to play every day, because that is going to happen over 162 games. And so they need to be well aware of where these guys are. The medical staff and the training staff needs to be so conscious of how these guys are feeling and then make tough decisions. I mean, look, I want Logan O'Hoppe in there every single day. I want Neto in there every single day, but I know that's not realistic. And I also know that you got to give those guys rest and make sure that they stay healthy because they are the future of this franchise.
All right, Johnny, this I think is the most important challenge that Ron Washington faces as the new manager in 2024 for the Angels, establishing a rapport with the front office and ownership, because there hasn't really been one, because Perry hasn't really had his guy and Artie Moreno hasn't really liked anybody since Mike Scioscia, right? And so
yeah,
I think
he hasn't liked anybody that he's hired.
I don't think he's liked anybody since Mike Scioscia, and he didn't even hire Mike Scioscia. He inherited him. That's right. That's the thing. He inherited all these guys and he liked them, and then they ended up retiring and moving on. But I think that this is the most important thing because there's been a lot of dysfunction, John, between the front office and the dugout, and it's the most important reason for two reasons. Most important challenge for two reasons. First, that he develops and maintains a rapport with Perry. Because we really felt this when Joe Madden was here, that it wasn't working. And then even with Phil Nevin, I don't know if Phil was able to coach and manage the way that he was able to coach and manage. And so Wash will have to navigate how much involvement the front office will have in decisions and how heavily the coaches will rely on analytics and information. They have to navigate some of those things. The second is that he establishes a measure of autonomy between himself and ownership. Artie likes to involve himself in baseball operations, not necessarily with who's playing and talking with the manager, but in the front office. But I think that Wash needs to have a gap between him and Artie. I think a friendship is good, but I also think he needs to be autonomous and kind of have the attitude of, what are you gonna do? Fire me? Because I think he needs to bring that Ron Washington swag, right? Like he needs to bring that in. And I think that's going to be really helpful and beneficial for this organization. So I think that this is the most important thing, Johnny. I think that he has to have a good rapport with ownership and the front office, but I also think he has to have some autonomy to be able to be the manager that that he is, the guy that was successful in Texas, the guy that is beloved in Atlanta. And so what do you think that it is, John, that Wash has to do in order to carry that balance between the front office and ownership?
I think Wash has to be Wash. And I don't think he really has to do anything but be himself, Mike. I think the challenge here, I know we're talking about 5 challenges facing Ron Washington, but the challenge really falls on Perry Minasian being
right.
number 1, a buffer between Artie Moreno and Ron Washington. And number 2, how much confidence do you have in the man that you just hired?
Yep.
Because I said this, was it Friday I said this? You and I have been very kind to Perry over the last couple of years. You and I have been very kind because number 1, we really like the way that he's drafted. We love the aggressive call-ups and getting us excited about guys. We love some of the trades he's made to help with the future, like Moniak and Logan O'Hoppe and those sorts of things. We loved all that. But his track record for free agents, not so great.
Right.
And his track record for working with Joe Maddon and Phil Nevin, also not great.
Right.
Now, I will say that I believe that has a lot to do with the fact that Perry never got to hire his guy. He inherited Joe Maddon. Phil Nevin was a holdover because Artie was going to sell the team, and then they didn't. You could make the case that they probably should have hired somebody, but I think with the pending sale, they wanted to let somebody else come in and have the ability to choose a new staff, new management, all that stuff, right? So I will say this. Perry Minasian, to me, this is the season where if I hear about issues in the dugout, if I hear about communication problems, then that's on him. Because you should know the minute you hire somebody that you're going to be able to work with that guy. This is your chance. This is the guy you hired, Perry Minasian. And so again, the minute that there's tension, the minute that there's word that things aren't working or there's some dysfunction or there's orders coming down from the front office and yada, 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 I think that's going to be on Perry Minasian because, again, this is his chosen guy. Now, his chosen guy, Ron Washington, is hiring his staff. He's choosing his coaching staff, which is the way it should be and the way it hasn't been in Anaheim for the last couple of years, right? Because we had, Matt Wise was a holdover. They brought in Marcus Timms because he worked with Phil Nevin, but then Matt Wise was still there. So there's just a lot of dysfunction in terms of the coaching staff and cohesion. I talk about it all the time. There has to be cohesiveness from the front office down to the manager, to the coaching staff, to the guys on the field. This year, that better happen because if it doesn't, that is an indictment, I believe, on Perry Minasian because, again, he hired this guy. It's his choice. His desire was to have Ron Washington manage this team. And so if it doesn't work out, I think that's a lot on Perry Minasian. But what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the biggest thing that the Angels are facing with this front office and ownership issue is why this move with Ron Washington was so brilliant. Because if I was a big advocate for Darren Erstad, and we've talked about Torrey Hunter on this show, but I think that the biggest thing that they did right in this moment was they hired somebody who's got a huge resume and who's got a great baseball reputation, and everybody loves him, right? And not just because everybody loves him because he's a really great guy, but everybody loves him because he's an incredible manager and an incredible baseball guy and an incredible coach, and he's earned the right to be heard. And I think that the benefit with Washington in the dugout this year is that he's going to be able to say, nah, bro, we're not doing that. Right. Yeah. Or if that didn't come up in the interviews, then that's on Perry, like you said. But I think that Wash is going to be somebody that can say, here's what we're doing. Here's what I'm implementing. Here's where we're going. This is the direction. And I'm Ron Washington and I stand by this message. Right. And so you've seen that with Phil and you've seen that with Joe, and you even saw that with Brad Ausmus. There was a lot of like nitpicking and questioning. You didn't see too much of that with Mike Scioscia, and it's part of the reason why DePoto was out of here because Scioscia was like, I'm not putting up with that. Like, I'm going to do what I want to do. And was he right? Was he wrong? We can debate that, but I think Wash brings some of that gravitas. He brings some of that strength into this dugout, and I think that would really be beneficial for the front office, ownership, and with what happens in the dugout.
Well, and it comes down to who's got the better track record, because if there's going to be issues, with the front office or in the dugout, I'm going to look around and I'm going to look at everybody and go, yeah, I'm going to take Ron's word. I think I'm going to side with Ron because of the fact that he comes in with such great character and that guys really enjoy working with him. We've heard nothing but great things. We shared all the great things that the baseball world had to say about him and this hire. And so if there's tension, I think I'm going to side with Ron, Mike. I think that that's the way I'm going to be swayed because he's got too good of a reputation in baseball to doubt, to question. And so if there are issues this season, we've been very kind to Perry, but if there's tension, if there's problems, I think we know where the common denominator is going to be.
Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. And thank you to Sam Blum for writing a really incredible article and allowing us to have this conversation. Johnny, just a quick note about the Sam Blum article. I know he gets accused of being negative. It was pretty funny to see some of the leaning towards negativity in the article, and maybe he didn't have to, but I know that with this organization, it's not hard to be negative. Right?
It's justified.
It's very justified.
There are so many issues that the Angels are going to have to deal with and figure out because, Mike, the culture is in the dumps.
Right.
The culture is in the dumps, and I think the number one challenge for Ron Washington is fixing this culture because the vibes have been low with the Angels, and I think that that's going to change with Ron Washington.
I think Sam put like desperate and desperation in the article 27 times, which I don't disagree with.
True.
So thanks again, Sam, for a great article. And if you want to read it, it's on The Athletic. It's on his Twitter page. You can check it out. And if you want to comment on the comments that we've made, we'd love to hear from you. Johnny, tell them how they can reach out to us.
Yeah, get at us at Locked On Angels on Twitter, at Super Halo Bros on Twitter and Instagram. Whether you're watching or listening, come on over to YouTube, find today's show, comment below the video. It's the best way to get in touch with us. Don't forget to hit that like button. And if you haven't done so already, hit that subscribe button as well. Mike, we're making the case tomorrow. And who is it going to be?
This is going to be the most divisive episode we've ever done. I can't wait for this episode. Every day you're going to hate us or you're going to love us. Tomorrow, we're going to make the case for Tim Anderson to come to the Angels. There's been a lot of rumors. We're going to talk about Tim Anderson, and Ryan Braun and our friends at Foul Territory are going to love this episode. It's tomorrow on Locked On Angels.
Say Ryan Braun, Scott Braun.
Scott Braun. I'm done. I'm out.
We're ending the show now, and we're not even going to do the outro. No, I'm just kidding. All right, my name is John, and that's my brother Mike, who can't remember names.
My name is Dave, and that's my brother John.
My name is Mark. Right. I think when we first started, how many times did we get like Josh and Mark? You guys do such a good job on Locked On Angels. All right, friends, thanks for being here with us, and we'll see you back here tomorrow for Making the Case.
It was a long day. It's been a long day. I've talked all day.
Talk all day. Talk all night.
I talk all night. Talk all the time.